So to
Okay.
go retreat.
That's right. So I went to the Goenka retreat as a volunteer for a 10-day
Uh-huh.
retreat. Then
Where was
then
it?
I it was okay. I mean,
No, where? What is?
well, it was in Bangalore. It was in Bangalore. Yeah,
Okay, all right.
yeah. The Bangalore center is quite busy in the sense you have to book the slot like 3 months prior, 3 to 4 months prior. It is like that busy as a student, but as a volunteer, you could go anytime. I mean, 3 to 4 days by can just call them and say I'm coming. So I thought this would be as I got some time for myself. So I thought let me go and do this at least 6 to 8 hours of meditation. I mean, seclusion per day was I thought okay reasonable. And up after that, I did a 7-day student retreat for it's called Satipatthana discourse course. It's a separate course apart from the normal 10-day course. So I did that. Then I came back.
Okay. So they shortened the Satipatthana course that I know of was also 10 days. So you did 7-day course.
No, it's 8 days now. I don't know
Okay.
back in those days how many days it was. Right now it is 8 days, and the final day is first day is not counted. So just it's like 7 days. First day anyway we start from the evening,
Okay.
so it's actually technically 7 days.
Yes, it depends upon the way that it's counted. Here in Thailand, they say to
Hmm.
come at Wat Suan Mok on the 31st or the last day of the month
Okay.
for orientation, getting in and getting comfortable and spending the night. And then the first morning at 4 a.m. is the start of the first day.
Right.
But you
Right.
have to come on day 0. So it's
Okay.
better to come on day 1. That just makes it easier. At least day 1 is not so hard.
Yeah. Right.
So, um, what what was the focus of the Satipatthana Sutta? Excuse me, the Satipatthana retreat. Was
Yeah.
it on discourse or is it on sitting?
Yeah, it's more or less the same. The sitting schedule is the same, apart from the discourse. Discourse is based on Satipatthana Sutta. So, Goenka, each day he reads out some part of the Satipatthana discourse and Satipatthana Sutta discourse, and he tries to explain what is it, how, like, what actually Buddha meant, you know? Yeah.
Yes, I do.
More or less, the focus is on the Sutta, but the practice is the same. It's like, as usual, any 10-day course, it's the same.
Okay. And that means that they have a short, uh, probably a third of the course is on just breathing, and then the rest of it is on body scanning.
Yeah. Right. That's right.
Okay.
2.5 days of Anapana at the entrance of the nostril and this part. Then it's just scanning the sensations of the body.
Okay. Would you, how to say it? You, you can see that in the Anapanasati Sutta, that Anapanasati is in fact described as to fulfill the Satipatthana.
Right.
Okay, so the Anapanasati is like step 1 and 2
Mm.
of Anapanasati Sutta, and then step 3 of experiencing the whole body is in fact the body scanning, which
Right.
can also be thought of as rising, falling, touching, sitting, because the touching is mainly what the body scan is doing. But there's also the sitting quality in the sense of knowing your posture. You can keep your eyes closed, but you still know what the body is doing, whether your back is straight or all of that kind of internal experience of what the body's postures are. It would then be uh, part of that um, third aspect of experiencing the body. And it's actually in the sutta talked about it in the sense that it's a skill to be developed.
All right.
that it takes some work. It takes some skill development, some rubbing it in.
Right.
But the result is that you begin to wake up the body. Not begin, but you actually get in touch with the body. You wake it up.
Right.
Very beneficial.
Right.
But that's not the whole practice of Anapanasati. That's only the first three steps, but that's Goenkaji's specialty, is those first three steps. And
Right.
so that's why I was wondering about what the practice was versus what was the dialogue that was different.
Right.
There's some other differences, or notable differences, in the sense that in the Satipatthana Sutta, I'll give you just a little bit of history. There are two Satipatthana Suttas. The Mahasatipatthana Sutta is in the Digha Nikaya. I think it's number 22. And in the Majjhima Nikaya, number 10. Now, in the English language translations that I've seen and known, they're different in the sense that the one in the Majjhima Nikaya is shorter, and that the full explanation of the Four Noble Truths was left off.
Okay.
Okay. And yet in Thai, they only have the Maha. Sometime along the way, they threw out the Majjhima Nikaya version and just put the Digha Nikaya version in it because it was, after all, covered step by step all of the other stuff.
Right.
And so that's actually quite notable in the sense that in the Anapanasati Sutta, the Four Noble Truths is not mentioned.
Right.
Nor is, in fact, the Eightfold Noble Path, which is a major part of it. And yet one cannot practice Anapanasati without aspects of the Eightfold Noble Path, number one. But also the Anapanasati Sutta does talk about the Sambhojana, the 7 factors of enlightenment.
Right.
But if you look closely, you'll see that that the path factors of the Eightfold Path that one walks eventually winds up to be a Sambhojana. It becomes an enlightenment factor when it's fulfilled. And so the fulfillment of the Sambhojana, basically, for instance, sati, it becomes unremitting. In fact, that's the quality that makes it an enlightenment factor, is when we're capable of coming back over and over and over again, that we're developing it so well that we nearly miss a breath, the mind wandering away. And in fact, various exercises that keep the distinction between the in and the out breath is one of the ways of keeping sati very solid, because you've got to think about the in breath and how you're going to do it, and the out breath and how you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's part of the practice of the sati, is to really use the breath to build that sati up as a practice until the point that it becomes unremitting, and then it becomes Sambhojana, an enlightenment factor. But until then, it's merely a path factor. So that's why it appears both on the Eightfold Noble Path and also in the Sambhojana as, in fact, the first item on the list.
Right.
Isn't that interesting? And then the next item on the Sambhojana is, in fact, investigation. Now, the Buddha was really big on investigation, and here it winds up being as the enlightenment factor. But this quality of investigation is deeply associated with right view, in the sense that one's right view is to keep looking, keep noticing, keep investigating, and not coming to conclusions that we become attached to.
Right.
And so it becomes an enlightenment factor when, like sati, we've got it. Where they're investigating, rather than living in the past, we're living in the moment. And And then the third one is right effort becomes, when it's fulfilled, it becomes actually energetic all on its own. So that the right effort is now so right and so effortless that it's almost like a spring-loaded thing. That when you touch the button of sati, and here we are in a really nice state.
Right.
And so the next one is with rapture, and when we say piti, we actually are bringing along sukha in this regard. Is the fourth state, which then is the fulfillment, and also part of the step 8 of the eight, the Eightfold Noble Path, which is the collected mind. The mind in the state of samadhi is the mind that's in a state of very deep happiness, bliss, etc., like that. And then the other items on the Sambhojana fit right along within the context of the Eightfold Noble Path as it has been fulfilled.
Right.
And this is something that people often don't miss, of how deeply intermeshed the Anapanasati Sutta is with the Satipatthana.
Right.
And so Achan Bhikkhu Buddhadasa actually approaches it from the Anapanasati position and weaving in the Satipatthana rather than having it from the perspective of the Satipatthana on its own. But in fact, Anapanasati version then of the Satipatthana really fills in a whole lot of the gaps that are hard to understand. And so I bet that Goenka, though he didn't talk about the Anapanasati Sutta, he was actually teaching as much Anapanasati Sutta as he was the Satipatthana.
Yeah, right.
So the practice then is actually integrated, that there's not two different practices or two different systems of doing it, but yet in the Anapanasati Sutta, it's much more clear how to get into the jhana than it is in the Satipatthana, but it gives it passing in the sense of the Vedana Vipassana, of how good can you feel and all of that. Well, in the Anapanasati Sutta, it actually lays it out. Okay, bud, you gotta gladden the mind. You got to get it strong. You got to get the brain pumping. You got to get the oxygen flowing, and then you begin to feel really good and satisfied. And that's how you actually practice doing it.
Right.
And yet, that's not really clear from the Satipatthana Sutta by itself. And part of that problem is that people will take the Satipatthana in order rather than see that these things, this body, feeling, mind, and mind's objects, is much more like ingredients to a loaf of bread that needs to be mixed together and then baked. Put the heat on. And then out comes real nourishment. So instead, they take it in order. That's almost like learning music by saying, okay, this year you get the note C. And when you get C down really well, we'll add D. And so now you can play note C and D together. And then when you get that done and get really good, we'll add E and C, D, E. Da, 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 da. And when you get good at that, we'll give you an F. No, they don't teach music like that. No, they give them about 8 at a time until they get all 13. Anyway, back to the point that we need then to see the Satipatthana as not a linear system of practice, but rather a method that works together so that one helps this skill build on this next skill.
Right.
And so there's the Anapanasati Sutta is set out in order of the Satipatthana, but the Satipatthana is in the order it's in merely because it was borrowed from the old ancient Indian philosophy of the four primary elements.
Right.
Okay, so the four primary elements of the outside world is exactly the same as the four primary elements on the inside, and now you've got them in that particular order. But that doesn't mean that things are going to come at you in that order. It just means there they are. And sometimes you have to deal with the wind, and sometimes you have to deal with fire, sometimes you have to deal with the earth falling on it, and sometimes we have to deal with water, like drowning in it, and all of this kind of stuff. And the order is dependent upon circumstances. And so that's one of the important ways. And it just because we're studying it in this order doesn't mean that it's to be practiced or experienced in that order. That there's a more natural order, and you'll say, well, what is that natural order? And we can say it like this: take it as it comes, or the Buddha used the word adventitious defilements, in the sense that the defilement comes when it takes advantage or it has an opportunity to do so. Okay. Which means that things are going to come at you from all directions. Mostly from inside. So this is basically what we mean then by sati, is to be awake to what's going on around us, to be awake and alert to the body, to be that we practice the body in the first place, but eventually we're going to have to open our eyes and walk around, but not lose the sense of body. That we stay rooted in the body until there comes a time when we have to let the body go, and that's either when you're going to sleep, when you die, or when you're going into fourth jhana. What's your choice? Your choice. Me, I'm going to go to sleep.
Fourth jhana.
Well, I'll get a whole lot more rest than you will.
Right.
Okay, so what we need to practice is that which we need to accomplish. And so the major goal, and I think that Goenka put it very well, though he didn't emphasize it, but maybe in the later years, because I was there with him before they really did a lot of taping anyway. And then his major emphasis was never mind, start again, which it was loaded with meaning. But that never mind, start again has first off the quality of sati, to wake up. The never mind comes from the fact that you just woke up. And that waking up can be very subtly happening, or it can be a wake up in the sense you just fell down on the ground because you tripped on something because you weren't watching where you were going. Okay, but we begin to wake up. We don't live through our dreams generally when we fall down. All of a sudden, when we fall down, we're in the present moment. It wakes us up. Okay, so but we need to practice it so that it happens at a more subtle level, because we at least can manage not stepping through roots and falling down. That doesn't happen very often. Probably happened to us when we were kids, and so now we generally watch where we're going. But if you go barefoot, you'll really begin to watch where you're going.
Exactly.
That's one of the practices with the Sangha of monks, is that they go barefoot. I don't know, but many people, in fact, will take their shoes off at the front of the ashram and do the whole retreat without putting the shoes back on. Did you see that at your place?
Oh yeah, actually, I did see. Actually, both were, in fact, they were two Westerners. Indeed, I was quite surprised. The whole retreat, they were not wearing any shoes. I mean, there were so many insects. I was always worried about stamping on an insect.
Oh, you sound like a fearless lion to me.
No, I'm always concerned about these tiny little ants. So
right. And am I smart enough and wise enough to watch where I'm going, to not step on a trail of ants?
Yeah. So I was always, that was always there in my back of my mind. To
Right, there's fear there. That's
Mhm.
one of the things that the practice of going barefoot has of great value. It begins to really wake us up as to which every step that we take. Takes a
Mhm.
lot of sati, in fact, and there's a real payoff in the sense that when you lose mindfulness, you may step on something that
Mm.
comes with the word
But in
icky.
fact, I didn't see them watching the floor at all. So they were barefoot for sure, but they were not watching the floor. They were like just watching somewhere in front of them, and there were just the too many insects over there. So they kept on, killing so many with their bare foot. I mean, that's quite,
Well, everybody else is killing them with your shoes if, in fact, the place is that covered with ants. In fact, the guys who are barefoot, believe me, are watching more closely where they're stepping than people
Okay.
who are wearing the shoes.
Okay. Right. Yeah, but I did notice few of them. Yeah. So even I wondered maybe they kept their shoes outside the center probably. No, I can relate to that.
Okay. Well, it's a practice for mindfulness. But I also know that the Goenka retreat centers generally don't practice walking meditation, but the
They don't.
walking meditation is still practiced a lot in India. I would say, especially Bodh Gaya will have retreats that have walking meditation, and there's other places as well as in Southeast Asia. It's quite common. And so
Okay.
those guys could have come from another retreat center where walking meditation was highly praised, and so
Yeah.
they're going
It's
barefoot.
mostly practice in the Mahasi system. Walking is a lot of emphasis on walking meditation.
Also at Wat Suan Mok, except rather than going to the extremes of slowness,
Okay.
the way that they do, even to the five parts of the lifting and the touching and the moving and the setting down
Yeah.
and the putting the weight on, all that kind of stuff. Rather,
Right.
just merely slowing the walking down and watching where you're going and staying in the here now, and keep
Okay.
watching that. And that the advantage would then be is to put a boundary, and that boundary may be 20 or 50, up to 50 meters. It really doesn't matter.
Hmm.
But about 20 meters is the ones that I see common.
Hmm.
That over the years that a walking path is still quite visible, and so that's what is practiced here in Southeast Thailand, and uh, so the story goes, as well as kind of easy to understand um, and practice, is that
Hmm.
one can reach the second jhana
Hmm.
and come to a state of thoughtless, but for the sitting, the third jhana requires the sitting down. That you cannot do that in a walk back and forth like that. That only up to the second jhana, uh,
Okay.
and that has to be, and in fact, it's intentionally done
Hmm.
to set the boundary of how far you're going to walk, so that there
Hmm.
will be the thought that comes up to stop and to turn around. Because if is then no boundary, then someone that's thoughtless, and also let us say uh, so paying attention to how nice things are, that he's not paying attention to danger.
Right.
Okay, and so walking around in the second jhana, and you can't even walk around in the third jhana, and you can't even get into the fourth jhana and think you're driving. I had actually seen somebody on the internet years ago say that he was driving while he was in the fourth jhana. And I said, dude, if I was a cop behind you, I would bust you for DUJ. Because you would be more out of it in jhana than you were if you were just asleep.
Right. Right.
Even the honk of the horns of cars around you may not wake you up out of jhana. And so you're out, bud. Sorry. So anyway, back to the point that we're making. Yes, walking meditation is really, really quite beneficial. But we walk and breathe together as a unit. It is partly the unification of the whole body and not merely paying attention to a small place like the feet.
Right.
Paying too much attention to the feet is not what it is going on. The most important quality of that is to watch where you're going. After
Right.
you've got that, you've got a whole lot of mental space left to do a whole lot of other investigations, if you can remember to do it. Bingo. Remember to do that investigation, and so you can get quite a lot done during these slow walking meditations.
Right.
And if you're just out for a walk, then that's lovely too, because most Westerners are not are in no danger of walking themselves into second jhana while they're out on a hike.
Right.
and so just going out on a walk, long walks, is very, very beneficial to be in the here now, to watch where you're going, to watch what you're stepping on,
Right.
to be here with the body. It's a very excellent way of easy practice.
Right. So it's the whole. It's the awareness of everything. The whole thing.
Yes, the openness, the big it, the Brahm or whatever you want to call it, or the big Om. And so, yeah, going out on walks is a good way of getting in touch with that. And yet in the Goenka retreat, oh no, they want you indoors.
Right. Most of the time it is indoors. Yeah. But in the sense, as you become the old student and get into the Satipatthana course and 20-day course and 30-day course, there is a bit of flexibility. So you're left alone. You can do like you have to come for the group sittings. Rest of the time, they don't worry much. You can be doing like outside, inside your room. So quite flexible. But the initial beginner's 10-day course is very, very stringent. Yeah, that's very strict. You have to be inside the room all the time, inside the hall all the time.
I remember, by the way, first off, Dhammarato was still kind of new in those days. And several of the buildings were built, and some of the buildings were really originally there and were used for housing as well as some makeshift kinds of things. But they did have at least a meditation hall up. But the point that I'm making is that the ground was still quite rough, so that people who were going to go barefoot there, every step is going to be full of stones on the bottom of the feet. So it takes some mindfulness of sensation to walk barefoot there. Then no grass, and so I don't know how it is now, but I imagine that all of that now has gotten grassed over. And
anyway, I haven't been to Dhammagiri, but I've heard it's a big center, and I mean it's very nice. I haven't been there once, but yeah.
Well, Goenka is just all over the place. There's a huge Goenka center here in Bangkok.
Okay. Right.
One of the stories that I've heard is that there is a kind of a club, elderly type people and mostly women, but that they have access to buses. And so they bus themselves to the Goenka Center and do the retreats there. And then they bus themselves down here to Wat Suan Mok and do the retreats here. And
Oh.
so it's kind of a groupie thing. And there's a huge number of like 100 or so women who do that. They make up the bulk of every retreat.
Oh, okay.
It is kind of the in thing to do. And that's just so alien to the way that Westerners do it. Once they do one retreat, it may be years before they do their second one, rather than having your life so well straightened out that you've got so much free time that you can do a Goenka retreat every month and still have enough time to do one at Wat Suan Mok too.
Right.
It's really amazing. So I thought that I'd give you that thing about the connection. That's basically how close the teachings are, is that they don't find any conflict.
Right.
But that generally what is taught at Wat Suan Mok is a little bit more advanced and a little bit more detailed about, and when I say advanced, in the sense that they don't stay much at just the 3 levels that we begin to look at it. But generally, even at Wat Suan Mok, most of the retreats are aimed at raw beginners. There is no reason to talk about jhana to beginners.
Right.
that we have to talk to them about the skills to be developed. And then how to capitalize on right practice.
Right.
And that unfortunately is one of the things that I see now missing in the Goenka practice. Though Goenka himself exuded quiet old man satisfaction and good cheer, even in the way that he would say, "Never mind, start again." You can hear that chuckle down in there.
Yeah.
Okay. But he didn't teach that openly. And that I would say that would have been something that he should have added to the whole system, is to start teaching more of this other part of Anapanasati, in the sense of gladdening the mind, to get the mind brightened up, to get it
That's
out
missing.
of the very morass that he talks about when he's talking about Sankara. He and I, we were right on the same page about this Sankara stuff.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The whole concept of gladdening the mind is, that's one thing where there's way less emphasis. And both, I would say, both the Goenka system and the Mahasi system. Gladdening of the mind. Yeah. Emphasis is there. I mean, once I started watching your videos and your explanations, then I thought, okay, man, this is something that I'm missing a lot. Yeah.
Well, it depends upon which suttas we pay attention to.
Right.
Because if we look at it only from the framework for the Satipatthana, nowhere in the Satipatthana does it talk in. And to be honest with you, even those who understand the Anapanasati Sutta don't quite understand the depth of the meaning of these Pali words that are there. And so there's also that one, and that is what does the word piti actually mean? And it is wrongly translated as rapture in English. I don't know how Goenka is going to do it into Hindi.
Right. That's a similar word, but obviously the meaning is, I'm sure the priti, the word priti we use all the time. It's there in every Indian language, I would say. So it's
okay. How is it used? Give me the full show.
No, so it's the meaning would be, I'm sure it's very different. So it's the same word basically, the priti, the Sanskrit word. It's usually it's translated into love, affection, something like that.
Okay.
So that's our daily.
How about delight? Becoming delighted with something.
No, it could be. I mean, it could be used, but usually that's not what we mean when we use it in the daily conversations. Yeah,
Okay.
meaning would be yeah.
All right. So I can. It's easy to see how words get shifted over time into the people sexualize everything.
Right. Right.
So if you see it as a also it would have the quality in the sense of the love is love fulfilled, not love languishing or love rejected, but that love is fulfilled and reciprocated. In that regard, this is what it should actually mean, that things now have come about, or that they have kind of come in a circle, and that circle is from not getting something into the reward of getting it.
Okay.
Now that whole point of getting things that we want is a kind of a hunger, and that we get what we want and then we get fulfilled.
Right.
But that fulfillment or that satisfaction doesn't last very long. Sometimes when it's a really big one, it'll last longer. Like instead of 10 seconds, it might last an hour or a day or whatever, but it's gone soon. The thrill is gone, they say in the song.
Right.
All right. And so people then lust after that feeling of elation, that feeling of success, that feeling of being on top of things. People often seek it in the sense of how much money they can get, and others do it in the sense of what kind of big crowd that they can have, like at a football game or at a music or at a politics or something like that, that they want a big crowd to make them feel good, because they don't know how to feel good all by themselves. And so they have to have a really big crowd to make them feel really, really big and really, really good. And so they become addicted to that because they think it's the really big crowd that made them feel really, really big. They don't recognize that they created that in their own mind.
That's right.
One of the examples I use is Ed McMahon used to be the sidekick of Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show many, many years ago, 40 years ago or whatever, but I remember because Ed McMahon then became a salesman for the magazines, and part of his shtick was a lottery.
Okay.
And so the advertisement is that he would ring somebody's doorbell, and there would be the cameraman and the mic man and a girl in very little clothing carrying a great big sign that was actually a check for $10 million. Okay, to give away to this poor old elderly person who had bought too many magazines, and they got the check, okay? And so every time I tell that story, everybody smiles because it's actually interesting, and even that is the thought of getting a big check and getting a whole lot of money easy, but we don't recognize how quickly our family will grow, and how many people want to borrow money, and the government comes after for tax, and when we want to start hiding it, as soon the thrill is gone. Even though we still might have some of the money, we not that first day when we got that check.
Exactly.
And yet we still have dreams that money will bring success. No.
Yeah.
The feeling of success brings success.
Right.
And we really set our standards way too high to prove to ourselves that we're successful before we'll let ourselves feel successful. All we need to do is begin to change where that bar is located so that the job becomes easier and easier to do. So that when we have the job done, then we can feel really good about the job well done. And it's actually quite easy to do. All we have to do is remember and put just enough effort into it to clear the mind out of the garbage, out of the thoughts, and out of the feelings, and come to this present moment in a happy state. That's
And feel
all it
successful.
takes. What?
And feel successful.
And you feel successful. That's the job well done, is clearing that crap out of the mind. Okay, now I'm free from that. And then here comes charging back in again. Never mind, out you go again. And now we begin to get the habit of, I can deal with this guy. I can deal with this stuff, whatever it is. It might be being sick or having just gotten fired or in the middle of a Goenka retreat, because that's got its own issues.
Yeah, I actually wanted to tell this. So there was a huge difference from my previous Goenka retreats with this, in the sense that I was always, I was making sure that I feel good. I mean, that I knew this was lacking. So I didn't. So I used to remind myself, I don't have to do. I mean, your teaching, I don't have to do A to get to B. So I can get to B directly. So I can be happy right now. I mean, why should I, be with the breath for so many number of times to be happy? I can be happy with this breath right now. So this was there. This was there. This was going on and on and on. So I used to be happy. I mean, usually in my first 3-4 days in my Goenka retreats, I used to be quite frustrated. Oh, I'm not able to focus on my breath. Oh, this frustration used to be there, but this time I saw a lot of difference. I mean, I would say I was comparatively like 40-50% happier, which was in itself bringing me back to the breath easily.
Right, because we begin to like it. We begin to get energetic about it. In the beginning, it's work. It's work to think about the breath. It's work to get the body going and taking the breath. It's work to gladden the mind. And so in the beginning, imagine that a car has stalled on the road, and we need help to push it wherever we're going for a little while. And imagine that the hardest pushing is when it's standing still.
Right.
Once it gets going, it's actually not too much effort to keep it going.
Yeah.
But getting it from that stop position and getting it going, that's a lot of work. And you can see that that quality built into things on all over the place. For instance, why do automobiles have transmissions? That's it. You need all of that heavy torque when you're going slow, because that the dead inertia and getting it going. It's a whole lot more energy to go from the first 10 feet than it is to go the 10,000 versus the 10,100 feet. It's you got it going now. All right. This is the same as one's right effort.
Right.
So that it becomes easy at a later time. And so that's why when it's actually a factor of enlightenment, we've got all the effort we need. It's almost already spring-loaded. We're there for it.
Right.
All I have to do is remember to take a deep breath in. Oh, I'm already enjoying it.
Right.
So this is a way of that practice, of things getting easier and easier to do when we're practicing them correctly, as well as the satisfaction that we can do in the beginning will actually grow. There's a skill in sukha to develop sukha, and that this is a place where a lot of people miss out when they think that they're going to have some bliss magical experience or something happen to them while they're sitting in a state of dissatisfaction, hoping that meditation is going to do them some good.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that mindset we've got to turn upside down, because what we want to do is have satisfaction. That means we've got to practice satisfaction. That is such a mind blower. that we've already been
Right.
practicing being dissatisfied our whole lives. That's how we wound up here in this meditation hall, is because I was dissatisfied with everything else. And now I'm just still going along being dissatisfied. And so there's that's an inertia there to change that whole thing around, so that now we're kind of going off in the right direction of working on being satisfied. So turning that baby around, that's the effort part.
Right. Yeah.
Is to get those bad habits out of the way so that we can bring on joy. And then there comes a time when we say, wait a minute, now I recognize that no matter how obstructed the mind gets, I can clean that stuff out and come back to the breath, come back to this present moment, and enjoy the Fitzgerald out of this minute. And I don't have to do anything except change my own flipping mind.
Mm.
And that's the only thing that needs to be changed, is my attitude about it.
Yeah.
And so we say, okay, I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
I can do this job. I'm becoming accomplished at it. And so that confidence grows.
Right.
And we take on more of a noble quality.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what they mean then by change of lineage, is that
Right.
we're no longer an ordinary person who is buried under our own pile of mess. Now we're the emperor of our own pile of mess, that
Right.
we've crawled out from under it, and that we're sitting on top.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's an entire community of people throughout history, and many today, who actually have been able to crawl out of their own mess.
Mm-hmm.
And every religion has that available to it, but you got to be able to figure out how to practice that religion carefully. Jesus was actually pretty clear about what needed to be done, but look, the Christians are not doing what Jesus wanted them to do. In fact, the Christians of America now are the same as the Pharisees in the time of Jesus.
Right. Okay.
The very crowd that the ones who were looking for money and self-aggrandizement and pointing their fingers and saying we're better than you are, and let's pass laws and rules and things so to make your life more in organization with ours. I mean, that's the whole show of Christianity nowadays. It's lost Jesus completely.
Right.
But one can, in fact, practice generosity and doing the things. Even Jesus practiced meditation out in the wilderness for 40 days. Go out in the wilderness for 40 days. Go do what Jesus did. Give yourself a break, and I mean a real break.
Real break.
And so any religion can do this. And the Buddha himself even said that this was an old path that he rediscovered.
Right. Yeah.
That this is not something magical at all or anything spiritual. It's common enough. It's just rare.
Right.
Because it's not understood well. And it goes against everything that our society has been teaching us, which is to be a victim.
Right. Yeah. True.
Even the richest people, even the richest in India, still feel like victims. They don't have enough.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so that attitude has to change only through wisdom, because you're never going to get the adulation that we desire, that we would really. I mean, you've heard the expression, power corrupts and ultimate power ultimately corrupts.
No.
Okay, it's a Western expression, and basically what it means is that the more powerful a person becomes, the more addicted to adulation he becomes.
Okay.
And so he winds up doing anything to keep the adulation going.
Right.
That he doesn't want dissent.
Right.
He doesn't want a free press.
Right.
So typical of a politician.
It's a typical position of every human being, and those who want power and get some, they want more.
Right.
And they want more and more adulation, and they want to feel good, while at the same time they really hate their jobs because there is so much back
Right.
blowback is the word. There is so
Right.
much blowback to the person on top
Right.
that the image in medieval art of hell is surprisingly, it's a big pyramid of people, where the people themselves are very, very small, and everyone is working very hard to climb himself up to the top of it. And there, the little guy is on the top of the thing with his arms in the air, saying "Yippee ki or Hallelujah or Allah Akbar or any of that kind of stuff. While there's 3 or 4 hands on each leg pulling him down, so that someone else can take the advantage of me on top. And here you have this whole pyramid. Now, down at the bottom and drawing back a bit, you'll see that a few people have left that pyramid. They're walking away. Why? Why am I in that pyramid? All right. But the more wealth people have, the higher on that pyramid they are, and the more they want, so that they can become at top of whatever pyramid, either political or how much money they buy a politician or how many politicians they own, all of that kind of stuff. And it's been there in human society forever.
Right.
Ever. In fact, I think politics was originally invented just because someone wanted that adulation. They wanted that benefit.
Okay.
All right, so that's how deep it is within each one of us. And that's also a major driving force in everyone's life, is
Right.
to escape unhappiness and get the adulation or the other feelings, so that we can feel really good about ourselves. And they don't recognize that they can do that on their own. It's a skill to be developed directly.
Without any external factors.
Without any other external. In fact, that may be the key that does help, and that is specifically without any other key factors. That we do want to go off to a Goenka style retreat, where we're actually, the biggest advantage that it has is to limit your exposure to the world.
That's right. Yeah. Seclusion.
That's the right word for it. There is a sutta where the Buddha actually says intentionally that this is one of my own analogies, because many of his analogies he just picked up from all over the place. Common knowledge. Four Noble Truths, yeah, we know that. Ayurvedic medicine, yeah, sure. First jhana, sure, had been practiced for centuries. How did you get there? You had this path, the Eightfold Noble Path, except that it wasn't called noble. It didn't have 8, but it did have the factors of the path, or you can't do jhana. All of that stuff was already around, but here's something that the Buddha says that came from him. And the way that I describe it is a log in a bog. Okay, a fallen tree in a swamp.
All right.
And when it's been there for a long time, it gets more and more waterlogged, to the point that it even sinks down to the water line, or even will go and sink all the way down. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, in the time of the Buddha, they had professional fire makers. Could a professional fire maker set that log that is almost fully submerged into the swamp? Could he come by and set that afire and make a fire with it, and all he's got is his fire making equipment?
No.
No. However, if they take that log and pull it out of the bog and let it sit on the beach, can they set it on fire then?
No, I mean, it has to dry.
No, not yet. No, it's got to stay off of the beach and on the beach and out of the bog for a while, so that it will dry out.
Yeah.
And then when it gets dried out, certainly it can be used to catch on fire. We can whittle it down, make some kindling and do the job.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. Okay. Happy to have you home. So the log in the bog is the same thing as the idea of going off into seclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And that most people, and in fact, this whole 10-day retreat thing happened in Burma during the early 1950s anyway, that it was kind of an experiment because the monks, when they would go off to the back of the Wat, they didn't have a 10-day time limit or whatever. 3 months was closer to the time limit that was normally used.
Okay.
So that's kind of artificial, but only so much can be done in that short period of time. But yet it is very, very difficult for people to have that much time off, as
Right.
well as for a retreat center to continue to do retreats and support people and support that many in a large group for an intense period of time like that. That's why most retreat centers only do a retreat once a month. Very rarely would they, and every one of them could do at least 3 retreats a month. 10 days, 10 days, 10 days, off you go. They could even have a ceremony where the bedding was handed from one person to the next as you just finally washed your clothing, your bed sheets, etc., in the morning, and now you've got them dry and you're handing them to the next person who's going to take that bed tonight to start the next retreat. I mean, we can have a religion and all kinds of stuff in it, but they don't. They need a break, and they don't do it one after another after another. Here in South Thailand, we do have, first off, they do have more than one retreat a month, but they're generally done in different languages. But none of the retreat centers run full time. Normally they do 2 retreats.
Okay.
And we've got 6 of them here in this area, all of them associated with Wat Suan Mok.
Oh, okay.
So this is, in fact, the place at the big center is where all of those Thai people come to do the Thai retreat. This is in the middle of the month at Wat Suan Mok at the International Heritage. They've got private accommodations for 370.
Wow.
That would be across 5 salas or 5 meditation halls.
Okay.
This is how big this place is.
Okay.
I don't know if they've ever filled it up completely, but first they had 2 dorms, male and female, with 60.
Okay.
But a few years later, they built 2 more hotel-style dorms with double flooring to house an additional 125, I think, in each one. So you add all of that up, 60 times 60 plus or plus 60 is 120, and then another 25 and 125 is 250. So there you are. That's 360 rooms. That's how many they've got.
Oh.
It's a big place on Google. If you go for Google and find Wat Suan Mok, and the International Dhamma Heritage is about 2 kilometers down the road from it. It's really big. So
how is the retreat style there? Is it? It's not fixed. It's not number of days is not fixed. Duration is not fixed.
No, but that has more to do with calendars and things like that, so that they will be fixed in the sense that the first retreat of the month at this place will be the guidepost, and all of the others kind of follow around it. And to no one has got 11 days, so some of them get in within 7 days for a retreat. They get sandwiched in. An example is that the retreat starts on the 20th of the month in the afternoon, so that the first day of the retreat's on the 21st, and it goes to the end of the month. so that the students can get out of that and then go to Wat Suan Mok for the retreat there on the last day of the month. All right. So because of that, between the two of them, from the 11th to the 20th is not fully 10 days.
Okay.
And so it depends upon what month it is. But because of that working out, so the middle of the month retreats are normally 7 days to allow for travel time and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the way that they're generally divided up.
But if one wants to stay there for more than 10 days or more than 20 days, could they stay there?
Yeah, well, when you say stay, what you mean is you just hop from one retreat to the next. You can just do right around.
Right.
And not only that, but each one of them has its own criteria for how long can someone stay after the retreat. But that's also possible. And then there's another place, which is Dam Kiem, that's also associated with the International Retreat Center and Wat Suan Mok, and is just next door to them. What they do there is they give Westerners a chance to live the life of a monk without being ordained.
Okay.
And so they go with the monks for Pendabat. They go out barefoot. They carry bowls. They act like the monks and everything like that, because that's part of the tradition in Thailand anyway.
Mm-hmm.
For luksets or non-monks to go out with the monks.
Okay.
And so they go out with the monks, and then there's a few chores during the day, and it depends upon who's the abbot of the moment as to how much free time. But always things are kind of done in the moment. And so if, for instance, Achan Metta wants to go to a school, he'll figure out what school he's going to, or he'll make the appointment in the morning. Then he'll go to the Wat to scrounge up people to go for his thing. So the thing to do is to not be around that part of the Wat during that part of the day, and then you're good to go. All right. So those who have a public life will get put into public service. Those who have a very private life will be left alone. That seems quite natural.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would be your choice. Which day today are you going to show your face, or are you going to hide away? Everybody's allowed to do that. I'm not so sure that that's how it would be at every place. For instance, I think they're a little bit more in control of things at Wat Pa Nana Chat and Udon Ratchasima, that's the one for Westerners. It's part of Achan Cha's. The bigger temple is Wat Pabong in Udon Ratchasima. And so that whole tradition, but the one at Wat Suan Mok with Bhikkhu Buddhadasa and Achan Cha, very friendly.
Mm-hmm.
So that if someone wants to become a monk, then the thing to do is to hang out at Wat Suan Mok, learn the ropes, fit yourself in, figure out how to do it, and then go up to Wat Panana Chat to ordain.
Okay. Right.
Because if you go up there raw, it's just too much.
Right.
Learning how to fit in and whatnot. So all of this kind of arrangement has been working itself out over the many years.
That's nice. Right.
So if you are inclined to come over to Thailand way, but as long as you've got Goenka centers that are in high gear there in Bangalore, you're good to go anyway.
Right. No, I do plan to. I did have plans to once to come to Thailand to meditate for like at least for 2 months. That was there in my mind. Just that I'm
2
waiting
months,
for the time.
we can set you right up.
Right. So that was there. That was definitely there in my plan. So hopefully in future, maybe whenever I get time, probably.
Okay. Well, thank you for the debriefing on the retreat that you went on, and thought that I would help fill in some of the details because I was a Goenka student for like 3 years or so, and so I know pretty well. But I was dissatisfied when I left because I knew that it was missing something.
Right.
And how did I find out what was missing in it? It's like really put things together in this sense. But I also understand why they focus on only the beginning stuff. Is because they don't have a really big repeat group that they normally just teach to one group, and that's how it was with Goenka when they were doing all the films, and then later in life he didn't do any. He only died 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, in 2011, 2013.
13, okay. So by then the whole group had become ossified.
Right.
And that one of the rules I think that's harmed them is that in order to do certain things, you have to not go and do retreats someplace else.
Yeah, that's there. Yeah.
Okay.
That's one of
They miss out on a lot of stuff like that, and even would they could fill or get more attendance and do better with, say, even their poly courses, if they would allow people who had really good poly but had not been part of their tradition, or even like myself, the 3 years with Goenka was not good enough because I left and went to Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, and now they don't know Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, so I'm on their blacklist, and I don't know if I could get on their good list, even if I went and sat in a Goenka retreat for another 10 days.
Right. Yeah.
And the last retreat I actually did was in 2011, and I signed up for it when Ajahn Po, the head monk around here, caught me doing the retreat. He says, "Why are you over here doing this retreat? Why don't you come back over to the Wat with me?" And then he found out I'd already paid for it, and so then he said, "Okay, you can stay." I don't know. I don't know whether it would have been a better idea to go over there, but at that time I wanted to hear Dhammavitu's teachings, and so that's the reason I had gone to do that retreat.
Is that retreat also Bhikkhu Buddhadasa's students' retreat? Is that teacher also Bhikkhu Buddhadasa's student?
Dhammavito arrived at Wat Suan Mok around the time that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa died, maybe a year afterwards, something like that. And so his exposure actually to Bhikkhu Buddhadasa was quite small. However, he has been there. Once he arrived, he hasn't left.
Okay. He's
been there ever since, and he's one of the main translators. He's learned Pali and learned Thai since he arrived. And at one time, he was considering going to Sri Lanka until I offered him the ticket to go, and that's when he balked. It turned out to be just a pipe dream, and when he's got the ticket in hand, he doesn't want to go.
Right.
And so he's been quite satisfied there. He spent most of his time at Dam Kiem that I mentioned before. But now he's moved to a kuti that's very close to the main dining hall of the Meditation Retreat Center because he's got availability of Wi-Fi.
Okay.
And so he uses that for translations and all kinds of stuff like that. So anyway, Wat Suan Mok has a number of things going on. And also, all of it fits under Ajahn Po, who sort of inherited things from Bhikkhu Buddhadasa. That Ajahn Po, in fact, had been the abbot of Wat Suan Mok since, I think, like 1969 or something. He's 87 now and retired. But instead of giving up being the Wat Abbot, he's still the Wat Abbot, but it's run by a triumvirate of three junior monks, each one of them vying for they may become the actual abbot after what Achan Po dies. So I've got to live up to the criteria that the folks expect.
Okay.
When the next abbot is actually chosen. So things are run very, very smoothly, very well at Wat Suan Mok. And Achan Po, the abbot, he doesn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
And so he's quite a I see him now as a friend. What a marvelous friend to have, Achan Po.
Wow, nice.
But he is the one who has me now on the internet.
Right. Yeah, I read that. Yeah.
Pardon?
I read that somewhere. He asked you, he requested you to teach students over the internet. Yeah, I read that somewhere.
Well, I haven't rebelled yet.
See, you seem to be enjoying your teaching.
It's beautiful. It really is.
It's gratitude.
It's also part of the joy sharing. That when you share joy and the people become joyful, they give it back. And so the talks that I have with students are often quite entertaining, quite joyful, because that's what we're selling here anyway. I mean, why not enjoy the smorgasbord while we're talking about it?
Right.
And so that's a major thing. And over, let us say, the past 4 years, that it's how to use the right verb. Certainly not drug me into it, but pulled me maybe is not so bad. Enticed is possibly a word. Became a curiosity, getting lighter and lighter here, to spend more and more time with the Dhamma. But the more time that I spend with the students, the more time I'm spending with the Dhamma. And so my life has become, almost all Dhamma all the time. And that's part of the intention of it anyway.
That's wonderful.
And so I'm getting great benefit by doing very little.
That's a wonderful thing. It's really great.
All right. So I assume with what we've talked about, plus what you've been doing, that your practice is going to be going off in the direction that you expect it to be going, that you're going to practice being successful, and that the benefit then is that you feel successful.
That's right. Yeah.
Insecure. That's another one. That's the big one, in fact, to feel really secure that I've got this. No more fear now. I've got it.
Right.
So you practice like that, continue on, and call me in a week or so, and we'll continue on with this. This is this is very enjoyable. Thank you for sharing all of your insights into the Goenka retreat.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good day. Bye.